Hi, I'm Sam, and today we're going to talk about growing up the French language.
Hi, my name is Oliver and I'm a trans guy who make videos about LGBTQIA+ people where they get to talk about anything that they want that somehow relates to them being queer. I'm currently traveling around Europe by train, and in Bordeaux, France, I met up with Sam.
My name is Sam. I'm a French writer. I used to be a teacher in high school, and now I'm focusing a bit more on writing stories with a lot of queer characters to help us get the representation we deserve. I am non-binary, bisexual, and I'm in a polyamorous relationship. Well, 2 polyamorous relationships.
Sam figured out that they're queer a couple of years ago.
Well, I did not grow up in a city where it was very accepted. There were maybe 2 gay kids in my high school that we knew of, and we were more than 1,000, so there's that. And I spent 5.5 years with my first boyfriend, who turned out to be an asshole and who was very transphobic, so it was not while I was with him that I was going to figure out stuff. When I dumped him, we started figuring things out, a lot thanks to one of my best friends who is very, very queer and who is non-binary, and they made me discover the word, discover its meaning, and little by little I started to figure it out. And I actually put the label non-binary on myself in a quite random moment, because you know, sometimes how you're doing the most mundane things and it's the moments when your brain starts to wander, and I was literally changing my sheets and suddenly my brain went like, wait, you're not a woman? And I stopped in the middle of the thing. I was like, oh shit. Oh, there we go. So I came to terms with it pretty fast, actually, because it just made sense. Like, even my favorite characters from my childhood were queer-coded and were coded as non-binary. Like Zelda and Sheik from The Legend of Zelda can very much be read as non-binary. And about a year later, I'd say, I figured out I was bi, because I realized that well, in my situation, I'm not saying it as a general truth, but if gender didn't make sense to me as a person, why did it make sense to me in my attractions to people? So it took me a while, it came up pretty late. I was 23, 4, and it was a bit difficult at first because I felt like I had discovered it too late for it to be really true or to deserve to be part of the community. But since I have such great friends, accepted it a little bit easier.
Like they mentioned, Sam is a writer, and this is what they write.
Well, I used to write a lot of heroic fantasy, but lately I've been writing more realistic stories. In February this year, I published a book that I co-wrote with other queer people, and among them there's one of my best friends, Leo, who I love so much and who is such a great writer. And it's a collection of 6 short stories about 6 people going to the pride of their city. Most of them are still figuring themselves out, not too sure about they belong in the community, but along the way they all meet some great friends, they find love, they find themselves mostly, and it's just so sweet. And we wanted it to be a very cozy reading.
French is a very gendered language, so it's pretty difficult to write in a gender-neutral way.
French is indeed very, very gendered, and it's pretty complicated to write in a neutral way. Like, I'm non-binary and I use mostly neutral pronouns, sometimes masculine, sometimes, but very rarely feminine. But it just does not exist for now. Basically, both the feminist community and the queer community, we're working, like trying out some stuff, creating new words mostly, to compensate for what does not exist. So mostly what comes up is the question of the pronouns. Basically, it's either masculine, so il for he, or feminine, elle for she. And we made up this neo-pronoun that's yel, so I-E-L, and it's a mix of both. There are a few others that were completely made up and I love them, like elle, which is so soft and there's just something very sweet about it. And also, there are many old French pronouns that come back because there are a lot of local languages in France, though most of them are on the verge of being lost. But there are a lot of them. And in those languages, there are actually neutral pronouns, like ol, ul, al. So some queer people use them. And it's really nice to see these old languages being revived this way. And it's a nice way to make some people shut up when they say that we're just making stuff up. Well, language is made up, so anyway, but it exists. They can't say anything about that.
But in French, you also gender the adjectives, which means that you can't even say that a person is, for example, happy without also gendering happy in a masculine or feminine way, depending on the gender of the happy person.
What's a bit more complicated is gendered adjectives, because basically in French everything is gendered. You can't be neutral ever. Again, we're still figuring things out, but there's a lot of things we can do. What we do most of the time and what you will see very often is that we write the masculine form and then we put a dot and then we add the feminine form after the dot. So like for the word heureux, which means happy, we'll write heureux, the masculine form, dot, and we'll add an S and an E, which are the ending of the feminine form, heureuse. And it's a little bit trickier when it comes to pronouncing it, because there are a few different ways to do it. You can either read the two separate words, so heureux, heureuse, or you can do a little bit of a mix-up, which is what I like best, because I love creating new words, and it's so fun and it's so unique. So you can just mix them and pronounce it heureux, and it's a mix of the masculine and the feminine, and I just love it so much.
But Sam thinks that the French language is changing to become more inclusive.
I think we'll make it. I'm very optimistic about it, because I see more and more teachers willing to use it, even though officially the government forbids it. Like when I was a teacher, we were not used to use the dot to mark masculine and feminine in a gender neutral way. I did it anyway, because I didn't care. Especially in the French system, where teachers are not so well treated. Like I'm not a teacher anymore, God bless. But they're not well paid, like definitely not paid enough. There's a shit ton of work. The conditions are terrible. But the good side of it is that French teachers are very hard to fire. So even if I used that dot that annoys them so much, they couldn't do shit. So go ahead, be mad at me, I don't care.
And lastly, Sam wants to share a beautiful story from when they worked as a teacher.
I worked in the school library, so that makes sense. I mean, I'm a writer, I work with books. And I got so many books about queerness and queer sex education and queer love and transness in general, and it helped so many kids, and I was just so happy with it. Like when this kid with very transphobic parents came back to me one week and told me that one of the books I had bought for the school had helped their mother understand that they were trans and that it was okay, that it was not a disease. I was just so grateful to be able to help them even just a little bit.
If you enjoyed watching that video, please like, comment, subscribe and share the video. I really appreciate you showing your love in that way. If you also want to support the channel financially, that's possible via Patreon, but really no pressure. See you next time!